you cannot be both African and Christian. Let's talk about it. This doesn't exclusively mention Africans. This isn't only about Africans, but you can't be two things. You cannot serve two masters at the same time. Meaning what? Before the times of colonialism, before those times, African people had their own god. They called God by a name, Utiko, Yeshua, Nkulunkulu, um, etc. And there were angels, angelic beings through which we were able to communicate with God, our ancestors, which is someone that you knew, perhaps, that you know now is closer to the spiritual realm, who has crossed over, and through that person, you're able to communicate to a higher power. And I say that to say there is conflicting ideas that emerge. There are conflicting ideas that emerge when you cross those two things. Now, not to say one is correct, one is incorrect. That's not the point that I'm making here. The point that I'm making is you cannot be both. To be both is redundant. It is ridiculous, in the sense that there are customs, beliefs, practices that fall under one thing that don't necessarily fall under the other. That's why you find that, especially again, African people is why I shout out us specifically, because it is my experience, as an African, and who grew up Christian. This is my experience, right? That we see people who have traditional weddings and white weddings. It's like, so were you not married the first time, or is which one? What's actually going on? You see people that claim to be Christian who still expect their daughters to get paid lobola for. Um, lobola. Ufuna kulotyolwe ntoni ngoku? I thought you do you get what I'm trying to say? There are these certain points that are blatantly obvious where those two paths intersect, and it doesn't really make sense. And I've been saying this for a minute now. When people ask me like, "Yo, are you?" Well, what's the question usually? Is it usually, "Yo, are you Christian?" or whatever the case? I'm like, "Nah, I'm close." And they're like, "What do you mean?" Oh no, I say, "Nah, I'm African." And then they always like, "What do you mean?" Because they are African Christians, but you can't be like, there's no such thing as a Zulu Muslim. There's no such thing as I'm talking about in terms of Muslim people. There's no such thing as a Xhosa Jew, because Jewish people are of a certain practice, speak a certain language, look a certain way, and believe in certain things. They only eat a certain diet. They speak a certain language. They have certain cultural traditions. The, all those things are encompassed under the name that they ascribe their people to be. People usually get confused when you talk about Jewish, like Jews. Like, is Jewish a language? Is it a people? Is it a culture? It's all those things encompassed into one. Um, same thing with Islam. You think Islam, we're talking about Arabic speaking people. We're talking about Muslims. That they only eat things that are halal. They only there are these rules and subsects, and these beliefs that go under the bucket that is that umbrella, that is that belief. And so to say that you are a Xhosa Christian is like saying that you're a Muslim Jew. Like what are you actually saying? And I'm not even trying to be offensive in saying this. Hopefully, if I can do anything, um, which is the same thing that I hope I was able to do last time I touched on this topic, is just invoke thought. Just invoke thought. Look up your lineage. Look up your family's history. Look up the history of your people. Look up these things that speak to who you are and who your people are, because I believe that a people without a history is like a tree without its roots. You don't know where you stem from. You don't know where you come from. You don't have any sort of understanding of what makes you tick, and what may inform who you are. you know there's obviously the nurture elements to who you are, but there's also some deeply rooted things. You find that you are a person of great gravity and wisdom. You just you, you just you find that from a very young age, people have spoken of you as an old soul. Well, why may that be? Is that something that's unique to you, or do do men in your family typically grow up very quickly? Do females in your family typically grow up very quickly, or is it across genders that this happens within your family? Or are you typically stronger in language than you are in mathematics? You may work at these things at an equal rate, but you find that, man, whenever I lock in and I try and do this, I'm just the best around. Whenever I lock in and try and do this, I do quite decently. Like, you can be good at both, but you find that, man, there's just something about this. You find that there are certain people who have never picked up a certain instrument, and they start learning the instrument, and it flows through them as if they've done it before. And with all these things that I'm saying, I hope to inspire one to take a deeper look into things, and not just take things at face value. But I'm not of the camp, because there exists a camp that would see this and rejoice and believe that it is an anti Christian statement, but it's not. It's not. Well, some of my favorite people in the world are Christians. Um, and for me, anytime I hear that, especially from an African person, when I hear it from someone who's not African, when I hear it from a Caucasian person, when I hear it from a mixed race person, I just take that at face value, which is, hey, you grew up that, your mom was that, your dad was that, you just chose to be that, and you have no reason to ever question it, do you? Whereas when I see people, and really, really smart people, that are Africans as well, and those people don't seem to question that at all, it just raises within me, how, like, the question of how deeply do you converse with yourself? You know, um, we can establish from this that I'm not a particularly religious man, but I'm an extremely spiritual man. I'm a Xhosa man. I'm an African man. I talk to God every day. I talk to God every day. Because if there's one thing you know about me from watching this, I'm a dreamer and my heart's of gold. And I know full well that I can't execute these things on my own. And there has to be a bigger, deeper faith, um, in something more than myself. And it is through that faith, Rudyard Kipling, in his poem "If," said, "And if you can hold on when there's nothing in you but the will which says to them, hold on." It's something to that effect. I know I'm not saying it word for it, but there's something like that, where if you can continue on the path, if you can continue on the journey long past when you long past when your strength runs out. If you can run out of strength and still keep going, then yours is the world and everything in it. And, which is more, you'll be a man, my son. And so, please don't take this as a sacrilegious statement or as a blasphemous statement. I'm not here saying renounce all things and don't believe in anything but yourself, because there's no such thing as there is no God. You do serve something. There is something that is informing your moral compass. You may serve your government, you may serve your political party, you may serve Manchester United. Maybe Manchester United's got to whatever the case is. And I know I'm making stupid examples and joking within, but the truth is, a human being needs something to believe in, and we tend to find things to believe in. So if you're not choosing to believe in that higher power, then something else is going to replace that within your mind, within what you serve. um, there are certain things, within certain subsects and certain religions that we can debate the practicality of, blah blah blah, but that's not the point of this video. And I think there are those flaws in all beliefs and ideas, including mine, and including, you can say, also traditional ideas and concepts. You can say that there are flaws in that. You can say that some of the concepts are outdated. You can say a lot of things, and you will be right. You will be absolutely correct, because they are human things. One thing about this entire topic or subject that I usually just put my hands up and I say, hey, is the fact that we are taking a God-sized problem and we are trying to reduce it to. I find the entire concept of, I don't know, the entire concept of religion, I'll say, or the entire concept of, yeah, like really, like large gathered religion and rules in terms of how to serve your God, or how to pray to your God, or how to. I find those things not ridiculous, because ridiculous is a disrespectful term, but I find them, again, we're taking a God-sized question and we're trying to answer it as human beings with what limited capacity of understanding or even fathoming the infinite that we have. Do you see what I'm trying to say with that? As in, we are very limited in our being. Period. We have expiry dates. We live, we die. And in the time between you're born and you dying, and you can minus a couple of years of consciousness, and you can minus a couple of years from the back of consciousness. So in what limited time you have on this earth, and you have other things you're focusing on. You're trying to develop your physique. You're trying to manifest what it is that has been put within you to leave onto this world. So you're trying to do all those things. You're managing relationships, you're managing people. In and amongst all that, you're still trying to develop this relationship with God. And so it is a lot easier, and that's why most people, I assume, just default to whatever religion that their parents had, who also defaulted to whatever religion, who also defaulted to whatever religion. So that's why, particularly in an African context, you find that it always, at some point, it'll click that, okay, at some point I could trace this back, and it won't exist. There will be something else. And so to say that that something else is incorrect seems to me to be you can't say you're not coming from a place of arrogance. You can't say that you're not coming from a place of, um it just sounds like a very lazy thing to think. And it sounds like a very, like, and I'm not trying to use these bucketed terms that may be taken in a negative context, but it sounds like there is a deeper truth, and instead of seeking that deeper truth, you are just choosing to wave it off, and that, to me, is something that I would ascribe, any sort of label to, that may be negative. But what I'm basically trying to say is there is a truth, and the truth is much deeper than what one person says it is. And so, again, that large grouping of, this is how you pray to your God, this is how you show, um yeah, this is how you show your allegiance, this is how, you speak in these particular terms. Because for me, it's all, I feel like we're all just talking about the same thing, you know because Allah is just the Arabic word for God, you know. Like there's a prophet, there are angels, there like if you look at these things, you find that we're talking about the same thing, and then they'll get to a point where I was having this very fruitful debate actually with this one person that uh, in college, and I was talking about this, and I was talking about my stance, which is what it is, and they said something like, "Yo, I hear you, and you are making sense. However, it says in the Bible," and I'm like, I can't talk to you because I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to layers and layers of conditioning. However, I didn't say that in so many words. Um, to try and remain respectful, you know, because that's what it is. And I'm not saying conditioning it in a negative way, but I'm saying these are not your ideas. And I had a debate with that person because I do respect their ability to um, create and form their own thoughts. However, I do struggle to have these kind of conversations with someone outside of an African context, simply because I'm not talking to you. I'm not telling you to renounce your ancestors, because that's your ancestors, but yeah, like you are 100% where you need to be, and I'm trying to get my people to where you are within their own context. You know what I'm saying? Because there are very different contexts in what we're doing right here, right? This person is being this slash that, and I'm not even saying pick your ancestors. There are many people who have renounced their ancestors and accepted the gods of the people who, you know, once were trying to impose that on who you once were, your ancestors. Do you know what an ancestor is? Do you understand the concept of that? Okay, you today or one day going to be someone's ancestor. What does that mean? It means I'm going to be in the afterlife. No, your DNA is going to translate throughout time and is going to be alive. Like there is a part of someone's genetic code that will be made up of your experience. Your experience, your living, your we talk about the instruments. You see this right here? My son is going to have a much easier time building strength, building muscle. His son, if my son does that and his son does it and his son does it, the fiber of their genetic code is going to be wired in a certain way that makes it much easier for them to do certain things than certain other people who don't have that same lineage. And that's why you will find that throughout time there are certain people who were named after, you know, um you are so and so Smith, you know, you come from a long line of blacksmiths. Do you think you're going to have a hard time working forging steel? I don't think so, because it's so deeply ingrained beyond your years, you know. And so to circle back to answering that God-sized question, there is something to be said for religion, right? And I know I've contradicted myself in the sense that I'm saying religion, I think it can be it can be a very reduced way of thinking for certain particular individuals who are only going to depend on that and not seek to form their own relationships with God. And that's another thing, you know, um, that may seem blasphemous to some people, because they say no, don't. And I'm going to bring up Christianity because, like I said, I grew up Christian. So it's like, no, don't form your own relationship with God. You form your relationship with Jesus, who is the one and only true Son of God. And then through that, I'm like, bro, I don't need a mediator, bro. I can go straight to the source. And but you can make the same argument against you know, certain practices, you know, with the ancestors, etc. And you can say, well, no, you can say, yeah, but you can't say that because you also do this to the ancestors. Listen, why are we listening to me, first and foremost? And second, on like on a more serious note, those practices and that connection with the bridge to the Almighty are their own thing. They are culture, they are tradition, and they are what throughout time religion can do and can be, is you find, encapsulate, and document these things in these ways, these formulas to answer the eternal questions, you know. And so throughout time, and this is where the mixing of things makes it tricky, because throughout time there are on hand answers to certain things, you know. I'll talk about a little bit about African traditional religion, which may include you are sacrificing something, you are slaughtering something. It's not just about for a poor man it may be a goat, you know. For a wealthier man it may be a couple of cows, you know. It's less so about the actual physical act, but it is more so about what that does within you, you know, what giving that in order to serve a larger purpose than yourself, what that does for you and your spiritual hygiene. And when I'm talking about spiritual hygiene, I'm not talking about like a fugazi thing. I'm not talking about something that's like in the air and, you know, magic. No, I'm talking about your own relationship between yourself and what you believe in. And this is all internal that I'm talking about, but it can be applied to the external as well, between yourself and what you believe in, because I'm talking about something that is a very complex and dense relationship, because there is, for example, an idea or a conversation that could be had, or theory, that that hell is a state of mind, right? That you could be so miserable within yourself that that becomes your hell, that you're living in hell because you have cognitive dissonance. There's a misalignment between your thought, your speech, and your action, you know. um, if there's a misalignment between your thought, your speech, and your action, then you will find yourself living in hell, because you will find yourself having a poor relationship, and that will create poor spiritual hygiene just within yourself, because you are not living up to who you want to be. You are not serving what you say you believe in. You know, it's, for example, me not making this, me not being true to that, not being true to what I feel because I think that it's going to rub someone the wrong way or something. That would create a very poor relationship between myself and the version of myself that I would like to be, who goes after their goals and speaks the truth with the short time that I have left on this earth, speaks my truth more specifically. And so to kind of put a bow on this thing, don't want to let it drag on for too long, but the reason why you cannot be both Christian and Xhosa is the same reason why you cannot be Muslim and Jewish. When you speak this, when you say Ndingumxhosa, it means that I eat as the Xhosas ate, drink as the Xhosas drank, believe as Xhosa people believed. I grieve as Xhosa people grieved. I bury my people as Xhosa people buried their people, and so on and so forth. When you say I am Christian, I eat as the Christians ate. I drink as the Christians drank. I marry as the Christians married. I bury as the Christians buried. And so when you claim to be both of those things, there is an inherent contradiction in that. And I'm not going to tell you what to do, and I'm not going to tell you what to believe. I believe that my purpose here today is hopefully just to enlighten someone out there and make them have very deep, very real conversations about who they are. Who are you? What are you? A Tosa, a Christian. And if you're looking for a little bit of guidance in terms of how to make that decision, I think the question would be for me is what serves me? You know? What serves you? Does it serve you to be a Tosa? If it does, and you can manage that and you can make that make sense for yourself, for your children, etc., then Tosa Joe. If you, and again, it depends on you and your management of that thing, you know, because people mismanage being Tosa all the time, and they think no, because they're Tosa, I'm not gonna be um, I don't know, diligent, focused, dedicated, because ngumxhosa, no ndiyindoda, therefore nyi. And those things are meanings that that person ascribed to that particular thing, excuse, and because they ascribe that meaning to that thing, that concept as it exists in their mind doesn't serve them, and so maybe that person's better off being Christian, but you can't be both. Again, I'm not going to restate why, um, but those two things cannot coexist because those are two different lifestyles. And yes, they are similar in many ways, I'm sure. But there are those, you know, final things, those big things, those decisions that may have to be made about how you're living your life, how your kids are living their lives, etc. That will be the difference makers, you know. um, Initiation's one thing that comes to mind. It's a very simple and easy example. Like if you are a Christian, then there's a certain way to be initiated. Jewish is a great example. If you are Jewish in Xhosa, if you're Jewish, there's a very particular way that you initiate your child, and it is celebrated, you know, at their 12th, 13th birthday. It's called the Bar Mitzvah, and at that, you know, blase, blase, blase. If you're a Xhosa, however, then you don't circumcise. So obviously, Jewish, the baby is circumcised, and then it's celebrated when they're 12 that you are now a man, whatever the case is. And then so there's a bar mitzvah and there's a bat mitzvah. One's for the male, one's for the female. I've honestly forgotten which is which, and I'm not going to look into it now because it's beyond the scope of this video. I'm just trying to make illustrate a point here. Is that if you're a Xhosa, then you are initiated. And usually nowadays at the age of 18, there were different things throughout time due to circumstance. You know, if you go back just say 50, 60, 60 to 100 odd years ago, then you would find that a man would leave his house at whatever age, go work in the mines. And then when they come back from working in the mines, they would create an initiation for themselves. And in terms of they would go to the mountains, go to initiation school, whatever, and then they come back, Benzumkiti, which is the customary celebration afterward, etc. Right? That would happen at older ages, but then due to the modernization of things, it tended to happen around about the age of 18 now. It's around about the age of 18. Some younger. I myself was with people that were much younger, in that, in you know, in those situations. I was with people that are much older in those situations, know of younger, older, different. So it is, you know, down to the person and their own unique experience and their own unique journey, which is what it is ultimately. But that does happen at those older ages, you know, versus, like I said, with the Jewish example, there you go. Christian example, you depends. Are you Catholic? Are you this? Are you that? Sometimes they snip the baby. Sometimes you. Either way, it's going to be a hospital thing, because being in the mountain, being initiation school is not really a Christian thing, is it? So you, that is both. What's your thing saying? And so ultimately, what I'm trying to say is, these things are more than just ways of um, serving God. They are belief systems, they are cultures, they have incredible depth to them. And if you do not take the time to understand and ask yourself who and what it is that you are, then you are creating nothing but confusion for your lineage long term when they ask themselves the question, what are we? No, but we're Christian, my boy. How are we Christian? But if you look back long enough, if you go far enough into our own lineage that we call, because we call clan names, ngizabiza uDlomo, uDiba, uYemyem, ngoLwamsila, uSophicho, uvele bambhensele. These people are not Christians. How am I? And I'm talking about it's. How many years has it been since apartheid now? 30? 30? It's been 30 years. And so what I'm trying to say now, and that's obviously long before that is when colonialism started, etc. But what I'm trying to make you understand is, over a long enough time, what about the next 500 1,000 years? What about your kids then? How confused are they going to be? Because they call these people who are past people, and in some cases, the ones that I'm calling out were royalty. They were kings, of course, and yet I call myself by who's Christian? I don't know. What relation am I to Christian? Do you get what I'm trying to say though? Like all jokes aside, all that. There's a very real conversation that one needs to have with themselves when it comes to these types of things. It is a very serious topic subject, and if you are a person who thinks that far into the future, if you don't really care and you're just doing what serves you now, hey, God bless you, man. But either way, if you did in fact enjoy today's video, please do hit that subscribe button. I have been Sage, standing on business. I'll do that again. I have been Sage, standing on business. Signing out.